There we go. Good morning, everyone. So we're very excited. I think this is the biggest, there's actually still people trying to join, so even more people. And actually, this is our biggest turnaround yet. So that's amazing. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Nicky, and I'm the office manager of Pro Talent Recruitment. And as the name suggests, we are a recruitment agency. So one thing we do different is we aren't just solely recruitment. We have a lot of associates who we work with in the HR industry. And Sue is one of them. She is incredible. She's actually been my personal coach for the past few months, and I highly recommend her. And one of her specialities is actually emotional intelligence. Now, this is a topic that is incredible. There's so much to learn about emotional intelligence, and Sue will be touching on a lot of that today. And then I'll be going over emotional recruitment almost, so how you recruit using emotional intelligence. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later. But the bulk of the talk today is going to be Sue teaching us a lot. So Sue, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm quite excited about this. I have to say, in the interest of authenticity, I am a tad nervous. It's my first webinar that I'm hosting. I'm always participating in one way or another, but so thank you for your patience if I get a little bit tongue twisted at times. So yeah, I have been an organizational development consultant for many years, and left corporate about 4.5 years ago. And my passion is developing people and organizations, but organizations don't change. It's the people within them that change. And if I have to go back through my career journey, I went into the working world very focused on efficiency and task oriented, and the people side of it was not my focus area. And through a number of, as you grow through your work environment and you mature, you start to realize the importance of getting people on board with you. If there is somebody leading a charge and there's no one behind them, then they are not a leader. And you cannot lead effectively and be a good co-worker if you don't develop your emotional intelligence. So I'm an accredited emotional intelligence practitioner. We have a number of different assessments, and it comes into coaching quite a lot. I'm also a change management accredited trainer and practitioner. So I love bringing the two together, because change management is all about how to get people to change. And so when you have a project and you want it to be successful, you've got to get the people on board. So the two work very well interlinked. So I'm going to take you through some principles. I do have a tendency for information overload, so I'll try to keep it to the minimum. Those of you who are like me, who like to put a lot of info into things, will understand my dilemma, and hopefully I will have got the balance right. So the first thing I'm going to ask everybody to do is, if you don't already have a pen and paper next to you, is maybe just open up somewhere where you can put some numbers in on your screen. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'm going to ask you to score the answers that are potentially here. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to launch right into your experience of your best boss ever. If you can't think of anyone who's a boss, think of your best colleague, co-worker, but somebody that you've been involved with in the working environment who you would go, that person, I remember them, they were amazing. I'm going to ask you about 6 questions, and I'm going to ask you to rate them on a rating scale of 1 to 5. So 1 is they do whatever I ask significantly less than others. Okay, they're bad. Okay, 3 is the typical, and 5 is significantly more. Okay, so that's your rating scale. Right, let's go ahead. Question number 1. How well did this best boss or colleague, co-worker demonstrate an awareness of their moods and emotions? Remember your perception of how well you think they demonstrated that. Question number 2. How well did they make others feel appreciated? Again, 1 significantly less, 5 significantly more. Anywhere in the middle. Next one, how open and honest were they about mistakes? Obviously, it's a difficult one to judge because you don't know if they're being dishonest, but just your perception of how open and honest you think they were about something, either a wrong decision or something that they did wrong. My next question, again, rating scale 1 to 5. How well do you think they made ethical decisions? Or did they make ethical decisions in your perception? Next one. How well did they manage their emotions effectively? And here's the clue, in difficult situations. Last question. How well did they recognize others' hard work and achievements? So we've got 6 questions, 5 each. So I would like you in the chat box just to total up your numbers. And Nikki's going to keep an eye on the chat box for me. If you can just give me your scores at what you came up with for your scores for your best boss ever. Nikki, do we have any scores coming up?
We do. We have a lot of them, like sort of mid-20s, 25, 23, 28, and then some early 20s, 21, 23, and some high 20s, 28, 27, 23, 21, 26, 21, awesome. 25, 23, yeah, sort of all in the mid-20s.
In the 20s. Wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for that participation. So my next question is going to be, and again, I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box, how did this person make you feel? Give me a word. Any words coming up?
Valued, respected, valued, appreciated, inspired, valued. Valued is coming up a lot.
Yeah.
Inspired, appreciated and valued, empowered, valued again.
Yeah.
Appreciated. Yeah, it's all basically the same. Valued and appreciated. Yeah. All basically the same. So you have muted yourself. So we can't hear you. Unmute. So if you can unmute yourself, we can't hear you.
Yeah, okay, you've got me. Sorry, I muted to clear my throat, and then the host had set it that I couldn't unmute. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we've got to the point where valued is so significant. So in the work environment, I see you, I value you. And that leads through to the next question, which you don't have to write anything for, but how well did they engage you? Okay, so I'm going to guess that this person who made you feel valued, you were not utterly disengaged most of the time. You weren't kind of meh, I don't know. You were probably highly engaged. Okay, and if you would agree with that, give me some thumbs up in terms of being able to see that this is the kind of response you would have had. So I'm going to flip to the dark side of this. Who loves Darth Vader? So let's talk about your worst boss and your worst possible colleague that you've been with. Okay, we're going to ask the same questions. I'm going to go a little bit faster because you've kind of got the hang of it now in terms of the scoring. So, worst boss, how well did they demonstrate awareness of mood and emotions? Give us a score from 1 to 5, 1 being bad, 5 being good. How well did they make others feel appreciated? How open and honest were they about mistakes? How did they make ethical decisions? Did they manage their emotions effectively in difficult situations? And did they recognize others' hard work and achievements? So let's get some of those final scores into the chat box. Sorry, I'm going a bit faster, but I'm hoping that that's okay with everyone. Let's see what comes up in our scores.
Actually, very low numbers throughout.
Exactly.
So we're looking at 10, 11, 8, 12, 15, 12, 11, 5, 6, 6, 13, 8, 12, 13, 12, 11, 16, 15,
yeah.
7.
So the numbers kind of show, in terms of that scoring, the good boss versus the bad boss. Okay. And the next question is, how did this person, whether it's the boss or the colleague, how did they make you feel? let's see some of those words of the feelings that you ended up having to deal with when you were dealing with them.
We've got here worthless, demotivated, unappreciated, frustrated, demotivated, anxious, worthless,
Yeah.
demotivated, unappreciated, demotivated, unappreciated, stressed, anxious, demotivated, worthless.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those are some really powerful words. Imagine going home from work every day with those emotions. Imagine going to work every day, anticipating those emotions. Okay. And so the last question is, so how well did this person engage you? Based on those scores, I'm going to guess we would have had a lot of people who were utterly disengaged. We talk about discretionary effort in the work environment. That's your going the extra mile. That is, I want to do something better. I want to put the extra effort in. And what naturally happens when you have all these negative emotions is that you may put in extra effort. We have a lot of people who score themselves high on effort because of fear. And more out of fear than what it is that discretionary I want to. And what we're trying to get here in a work environment is the want-tos. We want the people to come and engage and say, how can I help? What do you need from me? Oh boy, let's sit down and talk about this decision together. So the good boss, bad boss is just a little visual to give you a scenario so that when we get to the next question, which one are you? Are you the Superman good boss who makes people feel good? And this is not gender biased, just because I happen to find these as quite appropriate pictures. But are you the person that makes people feel valued? Or are you the one that is flashing around your sword and cutting people down at the knees? And we will have moments, please don't knock yourself too hard here, but you'll have moments when you will sit in either camp. But what you want to be sure of is that for the most part, people would look at you as the good colleague or boss because you have the right emotional intelligence. So I'm going to ask my next question here. And this is one that I quite enjoy. Please, can we have some chat answers here? I'm hoping this is going to be interactive. So, Nicky, if you can get ready to read out for me, why do we have a brain? What are some of the words that people might, or answers that people might be giving?
To function.
Right?
To think.
To think. Anything else?
Keep us alive. Make decisions. To survive.
Make decisions. Survive. Right. I've got a very switched on group of audience here because people often go straight for the higher level thinking and reasoning and rational. And the primary reason we have a brain, and this is the neuroscience behind emotional intelligence. Who can guess what the answer is looking at this picture? Staying alive. Right. So this will keep this alive, whether this is the form of a frog or a snake or a bird or whatever human being. Okay, the primary reason you have this in the top of your head is to keep this alive. Okay, and sorry, I couldn't help but put the Bee Gees in there. But so just bearing that in mind, we so higher level thinking a lot of the time that we forget that our brains are wired and functioned to keep us alive. Okay, and everything that you do is based on your brain's determination to minimize your danger or maximize rewards. So minimize threats, maximize rewards is the organizing principle of the brain. You're walking down the road, you see someone coming the other way. You don't have to go, okay, it's a dark alley, the person looks a bit scary. Your brain's already perceiving something. Okay, your primitive brain is already coming to determine whether you're under threat or you could be safe. Okay, I always go minimize threats and maximize neutrality almost, because there may not be a reward, but our brains are geared towards that reward. Okay, so if you have to think, when you learned to drive a car back in the day, and you got in the car and it was absolutely scary and your heart was racing, and do I push the pedal now, do I change the gear now, or do I put on the indicator? What was your brain's primary function? Was to automate that process so it minimized the threat. Okay, so now anyone who's been driving for a few years or even a few months, do you even think about that process? You don't. Your brain is designed to automate so that it minimizes any threat and takes away that fear and that anxiety associated with it. Okay, so we won't even talk about what young adults, how they drive, and maybe they need to be a little bit more aware of the threat that they are. But the point is, you get into automated mode, right? And what does this mean? So a little bit of the kind of brain science behind emotional intelligence. If you have to look, on the left is a picture that you're almost taking the top of your head off and you're looking down at your brain. So the neocortex is 25% of the impact on decisions and behaviors, okay? Your limbic brain, which is your basic, your emotions, your feelings, it has 75% impact. When you step on that twig, when you're walking in the dark and you think it's a snake, you don't stop to go, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Your brain goes, fright, snake, jump. Then you look back and you go into the thinking brain and go, oh, relax, it's just a snake. I mean, just a stick. On the right-hand side, the interesting part about this is that our emotional brain is 5 times more powerful than our thinking brain. So when you're driven by emotions, you are very powerfully driven. And it really creates a lot of potential challenges for us in our day-to-day life. We live in a scenario in South Africa where we come under a lot of threat. We feel very threatened. You just have to look at this last year and what has gone on in the world. And it is almost the epitome of people playing out on an emotional basis. They are fearful and they're working from the emotions. And we can see the chaos that it has created. So our modern day threats are not necessarily a tiger or a lion or something coming to kill us. A lot of our modern day threats are more around emotions. Fear of failure, rejection, fear of missing out. Just on the bottom of that list, I was reading something recently about research done into the really modern day latest fears. And the fear of being without Wi-Fi, the fear of being without likes on a Facebook post, that is now raising dramatically in our list of top fears. They've had people who are absolutely terrified of spiders say that they'd rather have a couple of spiders on their hands for an hour than be without Wi-Fi or Facebook or Instagram. And so we have threats in the modern day that are triggering our brain that we're probably not even aware of if we don't stop to think about it. Okay. So many of these are actually emotional and not physical fears. The fear of getting hurt or the fear of something physical, almost in your day-to-day life, is minimal compared to that fear of rejection, failure, or making a mistake or doing something bad. What happens to us when we get triggered by these fears? Your heart rate goes up. All the negative, bad hormones pump through your body, your cortisol, all those adrenaline, they go flooding into your system, because what are they designed to do? They're designed to get you moving out of that situation of danger. But if there is no physical danger, it's emotional danger. These things bring your heart rate up and they bring you in a heightened state of flight or fight. Most often in the work environment, we can't run, we stay our ground, and we end up in the fight mode. Okay. After a trigger, it can take your body 20 to 60 minutes to get back to normal. So let's take your bad boss scenario. Bad boss calls, hey Sue, come see me in the boardroom. Before I even walk in there, my heart is racing, my adrenaline's pumping, I'm in threat mode. I mean, what's going to happen? How do I respond? I'm closed off. Now it's going to take me an hour to get back to normal. Not long after that bad colleague comes through. Now, I'm not saying I'm not the bad boss or the bad colleague. I'm just saying you can spend an entire day sitting at a heightened level. And this is where people end up with health issues, heart attacks, all that type of thing. So you've got to find a way to build on your emotional intelligence so that you can improve the way you operate. Let's talk about your thoughts for a minute. 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, let me just add one thing here. On average. Who's average? I don't know. I think some of us who overthink things, that'll go right up to 90,000 to 100,000. Okay, so that's an average, right? Now, here's the scary thing. 80% of those are negative, the what ifs. I was on a webinar recently, and they said that we dream vaguely and we dread precisely. I thought, oh, how amazing is that? Oh, next year I want to go on holiday, and we have this vague dream. But when we think of the bad things that can go wrong, the economy, the future, the job market, all of it goes into this precise negativity. 95% of those thoughts are the same as the day before. What did I take something out for dinner? Oh, is there petrol in the car? Am I going to be on time? All these things that just go through our brains. And we repeat those thought patterns. When you think, you're building neural pathways. So I want you to picture back a few months ago when we had serious lockdown, level 1. Some of us were trying to get exercise and run around our gardens. If any of you did that and you made a little path, and then like after a month or so, maybe the grass was dying. So you repeated that same pathway over and over. This is what you're doing when you're thinking. You're almost building a trough. So when it's negative thoughts, it's going to take you effort to step out of that trough and build a new pathway. Because every time your brain goes into automatic mode, it pushes you back into the trough that you have created over years or months of thinking in a certain way. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of what is emotional intelligence. This is the genos definition. I'm sure Nicky will touch on different ones, but emotional intelligence is the ability to perceive, understand, express, reason with, and manage emotions within oneself and others. That is a big definition. If you look at the doing behind all of that stuff, there's a lot involved, okay? Applied at work, emotional intelligence is about how intelligently you use emotions to get positive results. So how do I adjust? How do I do that, perceive, understand, express, reason with, and manage in order to get the best positive interaction with another person that I am working with? Okay. The way you show up, and I just want to, I should have had you there in like really big capitals, but the way you show up determines the way people feel. The way they feel determines the extent to which they can engage, right? And that pretty much impacts on everything about the outcome of that relationship. So when you are having an interaction with someone and you can sense it's just not going well, you've got to go back to yourself. You have no control over that other person, but you've got to go back to going, how am I showing up? Am I coming across threatening? Am I coming across aggressively? Because it's that aggressiveness and that threatening persona that you might be putting across that is putting them into the defense mode. Okay, and so you're not going to get the best out of them. So often it's going back to ourselves. So let's bring this all together in terms of a bit of a diagram of how it plays out. So there we have our Darth Vader, our wonderful bad boss, who is going to call us into this meeting. Okay, remember all those wonderful emotions that people express, those very negative, intense emotions, anxious, nervous, afraid, all of that. So Mr. Darth Vader calls us in, we're in a threat mode. What happens to our thinking brain? It gets disengaged, it closes off, and we become evasive. We come a little bit, hang on a second, I'll hold back until I see what's happening. Then our Mr. Good Boss, our Superman of bosses, who makes us feel valued and empowered and relaxed and appreciated, in the big word, and there it is, valued, calls us in. I'm going in a relaxed mode. I'm engaged, connected, and open. See how this is playing out. Those things then impact on these different elements. How do I feel? What are the decisions I'm going to make and how engaged I'm going to be? And that is the crux of the work environment, is that we want people, we all know, we go there to do a job, but we do the job with others. And unless you're in some kind of very, very rare job where you never have to interact with another human being, you've got to learn to get along with other people. And you've got to learn to help them be better versions of themselves in the same way that you help yourself. So what am I doing that I can make this scenario better? and how can I change the way I'm doing it? So this is the genos model of emotional intelligence. So one of the issues that we had with a lot of the emotional intelligence assessments is that they were looking at, what do I know? And we've all, in the last 10, 15 years, we've heard more and more and more about how important emotional intelligence is. So remember the brain, the different parts of the brain? The thinking brain says, I know this is important. But the acting primal brain is going, I don't have time for that stuff. You know, that quirk or that lady, I don't have no time for that. We just get into automatic mode. And so they were going, hang on, a lot of the assessments are showing what people know, but not how they show up. We need to see, how are you showing up? And this is what they put together. So we have the first element that they look at is self-awareness. If you're disconnected, you're on the low scale. I have not a clue what's going on with me, totally disconnected, versus being present. And being present is a huge challenge in our modern world, and simply because of these gadgets that we just can't seem to put down. We are constantly distracted, and we're not even tuned in to what's happening in front of us. So in order to be present, we need to show it by demonstrating an awareness of mood and emotions. How am I feeling? What's driving me here? Okay. The next one is the awareness of others, being totally insensitive, indifferent. I don't know, I don't care, versus being empathetic. And this is a challenge. I often have senior or management in companies going, yeah, I can't show empathy because the minute I do that, then I get taken advantage of. Yeah, but you can do it within the boundaries. You can still appreciate the person's dilemma or difficulty, but you can still link it back to fairness and consistency within the company's policies and procedures. So often, but this is the one that a lot of managers are scared of, because if you show weakness, you know, that kind of a thought that you'll be taken advantage of. But I can still value those that work for me. The next one is authenticity, and this is very interesting. When you are closed off and you're trying to hide something, you know, we've all gone through situations where something is troubling us, and maybe we just don't want to talk about it or be open about it. But people, we all have a kind of a lie detector within us, and we can perceive somebody's closed off. We don't know the why. We then take that person as being untrustworthy versus being genuine. So open and honest about mistakes. That doesn't mean that you go and spend the next 5 hours talking about every mistake you've ever made, but oh my word, guys, I think that wasn't the best decision. When I look back on it, maybe we could have done it differently. What do you think? You know, just being able to be authentic about that. Emotional reasoning is the next one. When we are in that basic primal brain mode, we're very limited. It's simply one path forward. Okay, we become very focused on that, and we don't stop and think further than that. So somebody who is more expansive and has good emotional reasoning, they will make ethical decisions. They will take other people's opinions into account. You know, I had a client that moved their premises, and it was a cheaper rent, and it wasn't that far away, but they lost staff, valuable staff, because nobody had stopped to ask about the transport route, the public transport route, which made these poor people sit an extra hour in traffic every day. And so as the crow flew, or with somebody with their own car, it wasn't far away. Just stopping and talking to others in the company would have made a huge difference to that decision. The self-management. Okay, if you are temperamental, slam the door, kick the poor dog when you get in the house at the end of the day, do all those low self-management things versus being resilient. You know, we're going to have knocks. This has been a knock of note in 2020. How have we managed our emotions? How many times have you felt triggered in this last year? And yet it's how well you manage it that will show up. Okay. Next one, and the last one, is for leaders. How well do you inspire performance? Okay. Are you totally indifferent with your people, or are you empowering? Do you allow them to make some decisions that they can? Do you let them work out the how, as long as they give you the what at the end of it? Okay. Sometimes we go into that micromanagement mode, particularly if we feel that we need an extra sense of control. So recognizing others' hard work and achievements is such an important factor. There's nothing worse than doing a great job for someone and they take all the credit for it and the person under them has done a lot of the work. So just going and saying thank you is a great way of improving that. So those are the different elements that we talk about in leadership. Instead of inspiring performance, if you're not a leader, we talk about positive influence. So how do you influence the people around you positively? So I want to touch on this very quickly. You can go and Google it more because we're getting to the end of our time. But there is a free assessment you can do on SCARF. So David Brock did some research into the work environment and what triggers us. And he talks about status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So, for example, if you're a high status person, when you feel that somebody is threatening your status, you go into threat mode. So I will put this onto the slides, and I'm sure there is a recording, so you can go into this a little bit more, but it's such an important concept to think of. This year, so many of us have lost certainty. And that has been a trigger for anybody who needs an element of certainty. Okay, and it's been, you've seen this emotional fallout. So these are quite interesting. It's quite new research, but it's very interesting to look into. Right, so what now? I've given you all this stuff and you're going, okay, so now how does that make a difference to me? Your thoughts and emotions are going to drive your actions to create your outcomes. It's such a simple concept. If your actions are not bringing you the outcomes that you want, you have to go back to your thoughts and your emotions. I hope that makes sense, but you've got to go back. If you're not getting the result out of an interaction that you were hoping for, go back, start again and look at it. And the key to all of this is developing your self-awareness. If I don't know myself and who I am, how can I change? The first thing for any change is knowing yourself, okay, and where you are at. So I always use this analogy, and I know it's people go, oh, don't be corny, it's a diamond, but 70 to 80% of a diamond gets cut away. The core of that stone is what is most beautiful. For us as human beings, we need to find those things that are dulling our shine and remove them. But in order to do that, we've got to look at ourselves in a multifaceted way. So who are you? Know your values. Know your beliefs and goals, passions. Here's a big one. Know what your triggers are. What past experiences have you had that have put you into a mindset that may not be helpful for where you are right now? Know your personality. If anybody ever offers you free assessments, do it. And go and have a look at what's online. There's so much that you can learn about yourself. Know where your emotional intelligence level is at. There's some days when we're really bad at it and you go, you know what, I'm feeling very threatened today. I'm just not at a good emotional intelligence rating scale. How can I improve it? When people give you feedback, listen to it and learn to give feedback with empathy and compassion. Give feedback with the intent of helping and improving, not hurting and harming. Always ask questions. If somebody gives you feedback, get clarity on what it is that they might be seeing. And observe yourself. Sometimes put yourself into that little mode of going, how am I doing here? One thing, there was a meme I almost put on here, and I wasn't quite sure how appropriate it was, but self-awareness is a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop at a certain age. You don't turn 21 and go, right, I've got it. Okay, now I'm 40, I've got it. Now I'm 50, I've got it. You've got to go through it in a lifelong way. And my next one here is the very last slide. I just want to tell you a very quick story. I had an incident 2 years ago at a long weekend in September. I went up to help the Carcliff 100-miler race, and I was one of the support crew, and it poured. It just buckets it down. We had hail. These people were coming down the mountain with lightning chasing them. I was like, oh my word, it is just hectic. And I had to go and get some more supplies, and I'm driving along, and I hit the mud. I'm slipping and sliding all over the place, and I'm pushing that button on the car that goes skid control. Nothing is happening. Phone my son, and I go, this button doesn't work. He goes, Mom, stop. Push the button, go slowly. And to me, that was such an analogy of how we go through life. Okay, so I want to just put this picture in your mind. When you are going on a road with someone, you're taking a journey, you're in an interaction with them. When you feel yourself skidding out of control, or you see them skidding, okay, and you're going off-road here, stop, pause. What is driving my feelings? Push your emotional intelligence button, calm yourself down as best you can, get into your logical mode and go slowly. Proceed with caution. And that's my contribution today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sue. I don't know if anyone has any questions for Sue on anything. We'll just do a quick Q&A before we move on to my slot. But does anyone have anything they want to ask Sue? Okay, I'm not seeing anything for now. Hopefully some questions will come up soon. But if not, otherwise we'll move on to my session. Thank you so much, Sue. That was really insightful.
Pleasure.
And
did it make sense?
It does. It really does. You know, I think our emotional brain really makes a lot of the decisions for us, and we need to take the time to stop and think about things. And a lot of the times, I know as a manager myself, I often get pressured to make decisions on the spot. But sometimes you can even just say, "Listen, give me time to think about it. I'll get back to you." I think that's important. So
and that's that authenticity, you know. And I think also the important thing is to know that we've got to understand where we're at, and it's being able to say, hold on a second, I need to, you know, I need time. I do hope though that it was insightful and that you got something from it, but thank you.
So we have Kaylee Baxter who's asked a question here. She says, does Sue have a suggestion of good online tool to assess emotional intelligence?
I think, yeah, there are. I mean, obviously there's the paid version, which is what I do, but there are different ones that you can go and have a look at. And you know what, I encourage people, go and see what you can find online there, but please make sure it's credible. The more you have to answer, the more likely you're going to have some quite credible information. But personality, emotional intelligence, all of those, just go and Google what you can. And if you do want to have a full assessment, please feel free to get in contact with me. We do 360s, 180s, and yeah, there's even just being able to take someone through a coaching session of understanding the different elements and how we show up. Because as I said before, it's not what you know, it's how you show up that makes the big difference to people around you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. Okay, hold on. We have Cornell who wants to ask something. Cornell, I've unmuted you. You can just try and unmute yourself. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, Sue, well done. I mean, this is your first webinar, and I think it's you've done it very well. So well done for that. It was just interesting for me, if I looked correctly, to see that the emotional part of the brain is much smaller than the thinking part of it. If you think about the frontal cortex and then the emotional part, so it's right at the back. It's a little thing, and how we are driven by our emotions. And yeah. You know, yesterday I work for a corporate, and I had to look for some stuff that I did for a branding, and at that moment I was thinking the CEO is going to phone me, the marketing guy's going to phone me, and you know what? I was numb with fear at that moment, not knowing where to look, because we've got a huge share drive, and it could be anywhere where I filed it, and I did exactly that. I just absolutely stopped, and I thought, just breathe, and think. You know, even if they phone you now, you say, listen, just give me 5 minutes, I'll get it. And it's so sad that our emotional side absolutely takes over.
I love your question. And there's just 2 quick points I want to make. Mel Robbins has a wonderful theory. She talks about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you wake up in the morning, oh, I don't feel like going to gym. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. But they also talk about doing times tables. So when you're in that panic, go 1 7 a 7 2 7s a 14 3 7s a 21, whatever, but it's trying to get you into thinking mode and take you out of panic mode. And you're absolutely right. Remember, your brain is designed to keep you alive, and you don't have time to think if you're potentially under threat. But that threat you felt yesterday wasn't physical anyway. It was simply an emotional trigger.
Yeah. Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll take over now. Sue, if you can stop sharing your screen so I can share mine.
There we go.
Here we go. Okay, let me quickly just put this on mine. Here we go. Sorry guys, I'm just going to quickly open up my presentation. There we go. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so hello everyone. If you don't know me already, I'm Nikki and I'm the Office Manager of Pro Talent Recruitment. And I don't know, can everyone see my slides here? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm the Office Manager of Pro Talent Recruitment, but I've been doing recruitment for many years and I'm still a recruiter. I do specialize in financial services recruitment. And I've taken Sue's presentation on EQ and I'm making it more geared towards recruitment and HR. So yeah, let's get started. So I'll be quick. So basically, in summary of what Sue has mentioned already, there are various aspects of EQ, emotional intelligence. So what is most appropriate for the working world is someone who's able to self-manage, someone to control their impulsive feelings, manage their emotions in healthy ways, take initiative, follow through on commitments, adapting and changing to circumstances. Next is self-awareness. So you recognize your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and behavior. You know your strengths and weaknesses and you have self-confidence. Now, this is something that most people don't know. They don't know their own strengths and weaknesses. They don't even know themselves. So for example, you could meet someone, and let's for example say a bra, and they're sitting there with a sour face and they're talking to people, but they're sour and they're just very like standoffish. And you don't talk to them, and maybe a year later you see them and they actually come to you and they say, listen, that night you didn't speak to me at all, like what's wrong with you, you know? And you say, hello, you were actually being so offish and you were saying things and doing things, and you know, actually you were scary. And then the person goes, wait, what, I'm scary? No ways am I scary, you know? So people are not aware of their own behavior, and this happens a lot in the workspace. Of, you know, for example, as a manager, people come to me and say, oh, Susie's being horrible to me. And I go to Susie and Susie says, what are you talking about? I was just on the phone the whole time. You know, I don't know what this person is talking about. So there's a complete lack of self-awareness. And also the other side of the coin of people perceiving emotion is actually realizing that a lot of the emotions you are perceiving of others is often your own emotions that you are projecting onto them. This all goes with understanding yourself. So that's something that's relevant to the workspace. As a person, you need to work on that. But next is social awareness, having empathy, understanding people's emotions, understanding your own emotions, picking up on emotional cues, that sort of thing. So recognize power dynamics in a group. So, and it's funny because I read a book once that said that was called The Rules of Work. And one of the rules was when you walk into a workspace, there will always be the unappointed leader. So someone in the office that isn't the manager, but you know, you have to ask for their approval, you know. And it's so funny, recognizing the power dynamics, it's understanding those around you and understanding how they are. And you'll always get that one person, the senior person who isn't actually the manager, but you still need to ask their advice, otherwise they'll get upset with you. You know, so it's just understanding people, understanding how they work. So next is relationship management. So how to develop and maintain good relationships, communicating clearly, and inspiring and influencing others and working well with others. So this is directly related to the workspace, and this is how this is something you need to work on and develop if you want to move forward in the future. Okay, so next is, so I mentioned earlier about all these things, and you're thinking, but how exactly is this relevant to the working world, and how is EQ relevant to the working world? So let's touch on a few things. So EQ assessments. So as Sue mentioned earlier, she does the assessments, and there are so many different types of EQ assessments. There are actually 17 known assessments that I'm aware of at the moment, but Sue's is one of them, and it's amazing. And I highly recommend doing an EQ assessment to learn a lot about yourself. But the point is that an EQ assessment there's different ways to assess yourself. So some are just sort of answering questions, some are task orientated, so they might even give you something to do. But there's different ways to do these things, and sometimes you have to be in a very good state of mind, or even just not a negative state of mind to do these assessments. And as a recruiter, I often have a lot of clients who use these assessments and make decisions based completely off of the assessment, not taking into consideration the interview, the person's CV, or their skills, or whatever the case is. So we have a handful of clients who literally will interview the person. If they like them, the next thing is assessment. And if they don't pass that assessment, they will not consider them at all, ever, no matter what. And as a recruiter, I say, but the assessment should be taken into consideration, but should not make that your entire decision shouldn't be based completely off of the assessment. They should be used in conjunction with recruitment. So for example, as Sue mentioned earlier, people know how to behave. They know that they shouldn't shout, but yet when you put them in a circumstance, they start shouting because of their own factors or whatever's happening. So in EQ assessment, some of them only look at what you should maybe do. And so they might not always be accurate. Now, Suze is amazing. She takes into consideration a lot of other things, which is why we always recommend her. But yeah, so as a recruiter, I say use EQ assessments. They're incredible, but use it to add to your decision. So speaking of jobs of the future, something important to actually keep in mind is a lot of the leaders, the motivational leaders out there nowadays are saying, hire for personality, hire for work ethics, don't hire for skill, don't hire for education, because what you see on paper is often not what the person's really like. And as a recruiter, I've seen it. I actually can't even express to you how many occasions I've seen a client make a decision based purely on the person's education or based purely on, their past work experience and how they can actually do the job. So a person can physically do the job, or they know how to do the job, but emotion and people skills and everything that goes into EQ is so much more important. You could have someone who's the best salesperson in the world, but they make the entire office negative. They're the bad apple. No one likes them. Everyone starts leaving the company. No one's happy because of this one person. Although that person is brilliant at their job, they are ruining the culture of the company. So I want you to know and to keep in mind that jobs of the future will be a lot less education focused and a lot less focused on your previous work experience, but rather focused on you as a person and how you actually deal with situations. So I predict as a recruiter that a lot of the recruitment nowadays will actually be assessment focused, so that'll come into a lot more consideration now. But also they might even give you scenarios. So they might even have you come in for a day and even challenge you and even say, listen, here's our new program we're wanting to implement. I want you to, sort of go through it and tell me what you think the problems are. So they might even have you do a practical assessment, which would help quite a bit. So yeah, I do predict in the future that we're going to move away from education and more towards soft skills as a hiring process. Because I've personally, as a company, and I mean, not just here, but me with previous companies, we have hired so many staff who have degrees, masters, honors, doctorates, whatever the case is, and they've actually ended up being quite average, so, or they don't even remember their work. So you think, but you studied this and you finished your degree last year, how can you forget it? Oh, I just don't remember what we covered in that section, So degrees and qualifications are becoming not as important anymore, also because people can't afford them. I mean, if you think about America, how they go on about how student loans are putting people in debt for like 10, 20 years afterwards because education is so expensive there. And we're not as bad, but I do think going forward, I mean, education isn't cheap. People can't afford to go to university nowadays anymore. So I do think there'll be less focus placed on education and previous work experience and more focus placed on EQ. And that's really important. So yeah, I touched on that now with recruitment changes, is we will now be recruiting for soft skills. We'll be testing you in different situations, in different scenarios. We'll also be probing a lot more into your past, because past behavior predicts future behavior. And as a recruiter, I don't ask, oh, how would you react in this situation? I say, tell me about your previous job. Tell me about your worst day ever. And they tell me about that day. And I say, how did you feel? How did you react? What did you do? That sort of thing. So we probe a lot more into their emotional intelligence. And even just by meeting someone face to face, you can kind of get a feel of what they are like and how they react. And I also, in my interviews, I actually throw curveballs and big curveballs. So for example, and it's actually quite invasive, but it does work really well if you want to find out more about the person. So I'll even ask them something really in depth, like they'll tell me about their worst day ever, and I can see they're holding back, and I can see they're trying to be professional and composed. And I'll dig, and I'll say, oh, you must have been really angry. Oh, how? And that one girl you spoke about, she must have been terrible to you. How did you feel about that? A lot of people know what I'm doing. They're not silly, but they can see I'm digging for more. And so they'll give me a little bit more, and they'll give me a little bit more. And eventually I'll say to them, listen, I'm just a recruiter. I can feel you holding back. Just be honest with me. I want to know exactly what happened that day. And often then I'll get the finger waving, and they'll tell me what really happened that day. And then I see everything. So I think interviews and HR and just recruitment in general is going to be moving a lot more towards testing people's soft skills. And interviews aren't just going to be, oh, what was this, and what was your qualification here, and how long did you study for? It's going to be more, how did you feel, how did you react? Because as we all mentioned earlier, I mean, if someone can be brilliant, they can be absolutely brilliant at their job, but if they're a miserable person, it's going to ruin the company culture, and it's not going to be great. So yeah, that's basically how is EQ relevant to the working world, is the assessments. EQ is going to shape jobs in the future. So I predict a lot more internships, a lot more apprenticeships, because education is going to, I have a feeling education is going to take a back bender, and people will be more focused on, teaching people the most important parts of the job. Let me go to the next slide. All right, so speaking of the ideal employee, so you might be thinking, okay, so it's not that important anymore that I study, but you know what? Someone who studies later on in life, it shows part of themselves. And when I interview someone, they say, I've just started my degree now. And I go, oh, but you're 35. Why are you starting your degree now? And they say, listen, I want to push myself. I want to learn more. I want to get further in life. That's a huge indicator of a very, very rare trait that comes in with EQ. And that's that need to constantly push and progress yourself. So I'm not trying to say you shouldn't study. Studying is really, really good. And those who study further while working because they didn't have the opportunity when they were younger, it just shows another level of EQ that most people don't have. So yeah, the ideal employee. So what should you be striving towards as an employee or as an employer who wants to employ someone else? What should you be looking for? You should be looking for someone who strives for self-improvement, someone who's open to criticism and is coachable. Again, you could hire the smartest person in the world, but if they don't listen to you and they don't want to learn, you're not going to be happy with them. Next is being proactive and self-motivated and self-controlled. I mean, literally just those words, you can tell how important it is. Someone who sits behind their desk and does nothing all day unless they're told is not great. Being self-motivated. I mean, as a company, we will try our best to try and motivate you. But if you're not genuinely motivated within yourself, there's nothing we can do. And companies want someone who's energetic, who's happy to learn, keeps going, keeps asking questions. That's self-motivation. And also self-control. Just as a recruitment agency, we've heard so many instances of people in the workplace just snapping and shouting at people and throwing things on the floor. You're surprised, but this happens a lot more than it should. So self-control is really important. Next is being compassionate and understanding towards each other. So, you could have a colleague who's always really nice to you and you have a good relationship, and all of a sudden one day they shout at you. And that self-control of you not shouting back, and then that empathy comes in of how you understand. There could be something in the background you don't know about that's going on in that person. So just being understanding, compassionate will make you a better person and help you understand the other person better too. So this is the ideal employee going forward. Companies, I predict, will be looking more towards personality, towards these traits, rather than education and even previous work experience. And that's basically me. I think okay, I've actually finished a little bit earlier. Oh wow, I'm actually pretty quick. I normally take ages to talk, but yeah, that's basically my presentation. I just wanted to touch on the relevance of EQ and the recruitment in the HR industry, and how jobs and companies will be moving forward in the future with regards to EQ. But yeah, that's basically it. Let me just check and see if there's any chats, if any questions. So if anyone has any questions, now will be a good time to ask. Let me have a look here. So I see a lot of questions towards Sue, but that's fine. If anyone has any questions for me, please feel free to look. Otherwise, yeah, so what I'm going to do now is just quickly go out of my presentation. Let me just get out of this quickly, and then I'm going to unmute Sue. There we go. And then Sue can have a little chat at the end. Sorry, let me unmute you. There we go, Sue. If you want to say anything quickly.
Thank you so much for that. So a very valid points there that I just want to touch on. First of all, when you are being interviewed, and so some of these assessments will look at how authentically you are responding, please don't ever feel the need to manipulate. It's so important that be who you are, because if you take a job that's a bad fit for you because you've manipulated the results, that's not going to help you in the end. It's going to make your life a misery. So, and also a lot of the assessments have built-in verification, and they can end up throwing it out if there's a manipulation taking place. So be authentic, be yourself. If you have had a bad experience, switch it around to what you learned from it. You know, if you have, I mean, hell, I was in my 20s when I had an absolute wobbly one day, stormed into my boss's office and put my resignation on his desk, and he said, go home, have coffee, relax, I'll see you tomorrow, you know. And so we've all had our moments, but it's what did I learn from it? So be authentic, be open. Don't, you know, there's a difference in when we look at the EQ recruitment assessment, we talk about inflation and manipulation. So when we're going for an interview, we often put our best foot forward. That's inflating. Okay, it's subconscious. I want to do my best. I want to present myself in the best way. Manipulation, on the other hand, is conscious. That's where I'm really trying to do something different to either who I am, or I'm trying to manipulate the results in a certain way. Don't go down the manipulation route. No matter how desperate you are, it doesn't come across well, and it doesn't stand well in your favor. You know, Nicky alluded to the applied knowledge. She spoke about degrees versus work experience and things like that. But going forward, it's how you play it out. How do you apply your knowledge? How do you apply your emotional intelligence? I can be a PhD in anything, but if I don't actually apply it, it means nothing. So we need to just learn to be better at how we show up and how we apply things, and particularly working with others. They always say you hire for skills and you fire for behavior. And more often than not, that's exactly what happens. The reasons companies are going so much more towards assessments is because it's such an expensive and long process to get rid of a bad fit. So, I mean, I often say to my clients, slow to hire, quick to fire. Take your time in hiring. We need you. Oh, we need someone. Cool. We put somebody in there, and then we have a 2-year problem, or however long it takes. So as recruiters or managers, I would encourage you to slow that process down and just go into a little bit more that you're happy with the results, and both of you are happy, because it matters as much to the person fitting as for you to have a good employee. So yeah, I think hopefully that was useful. Oh, I put two things in the chat. Mind Tools is a great resource if you don't already know about it. There's lots of awesome tips and things on there, and they also have a free EQ assessment. And then the Institute of Neuro Leadership is also a great resource, and they do the free SCARF assessment. So you can see, is it more status for me, or is it more certainty? You can play around with that and do it with your teams as well. So just 2 links that you may want to use.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much, Sue. Well, that basically concludes our session for today. And actually, we are on time, which is the first for me personally, because I always finish late. So we are exactly on time. Thank you so much, everyone. We have a few seconds if you want to ask any questions just before we go. But thank you, everyone. And Sue, you were incredible. Even I learned a lot today.
Thank you.
Everyone enjoy your days, and thanks so much.
If anyone wants a free emotional climate index for their team, you can pop me an email, and I will set that up for you. It's an indicator of how people are feeling. You then have the discussion as to the why, where, and how. So you're welcome to that.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Sue. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Bye.